What if the very symbol of hope and leadership, the former President of the United States, suddenly took to the streets to deliver a searing, unscripted denunciation of the system? Imagine Barack Obama, revered worldwide for his calm, measured rhetoric, emerging unexpectedly at a grassroots street demonstration, his words laced with harsh criticism that ignited a firestorm of debate. How would the world react when decades of political decorum were shattered in one electrifying moment? Get ready to witness the cascade of chaos, controversy, and inspiration that followed as social media exploded with every word he spoke. It was a brisk autumn afternoon in a sprawling metropolis. New York City had its usual hum of urban life, the crisp air punctuated by the sound of honking horns and the murmur of countless conversations on sidewalks. In one of the bustling downtown districts, an impromptu street demonstration had gathered momentum. Ordinary citizens, passionate about the future of democracy and disillusioned by a system many felt had lost its way, had taken to the streets. Their chants echoed along concrete avenues, their banners and placards a vivid tapestry of hope, anger, and frustration. No one could have predicted that on this day, history would be rewritten by a single, unforgettable moment. Barack Obama had been out of the formal political arena for several years, his legacy a subject of both admiration and fierce debate. Yet despite his retreat from daily politics, he had always remained connected to the pulse of the people. On this day, while most of the world was busy with its routine, a small group of activists had organized a demonstration to protest systemic issues plaguing the nation: inequality, corruption, and the erosion of democratic values. The protest was unsanctioned and unplanned, a spontaneous outpouring of civic engagement that had grown steadily as the afternoon wore on. Among the throngs of demonstrators, a ripple of excitement began to spread. Rumors whispered through the crowd that a very familiar face might soon appear: Barack Obama himself. At first, the murmurs were tentative, almost unbelievable. But as the hours passed, the energy shifted. In a quiet corner of the demonstration, near a row of street vendors, and beneath a banner reading, "Time for change now," Obama emerged. Clad in a simple jacket and jeans, his demeanor unassuming yet resolute, he stepped forward from a group of supporters with a calm that belied the charged atmosphere around him. For a moment, the entire city street fell silent. Cameras from news vans parked along the curb began rolling, and the hum of smartphones recording every second filled the air. Obama paused at the edge of a makeshift stage, a raised platform fashioned from a few crates, and looked out over the sea of expectant faces. His eyes, familiar and thoughtful, scanned the crowd as if searching for the answer to a question that had long troubled him. Then, in a voice that was both gentle and unyielding, he began to speak. "I stand before you today not as a former president, but as a fellow citizen who believes that the promise of our democracy is too sacred to be compromised," he declared, his tone measured but imbued with a passion that set hearts racing. "For too long, we have allowed the machinery of power to silence the voices of the people. Today, I ask you, no, I demand, that we open our eyes to the harsh realities of a system that favors the few over the many." The words struck the crowd like a bolt of lightning. Many were visibly moved, tears glistened in the eyes of older protesters, and younger voices rose in spontaneous cheers. Yet, not everyone was ready to embrace the revelation. A few in the crowd exchanged wary glances, uncertain whether this was the familiar oratory of a beloved leader or something more radical than they had anticipated. But as Obama continued, his speech gained momentum, evolving from a measured critique into a fervent call for systemic change. He spoke of a system that had become mired in bureaucratic inertia and corporate influence, one that often sidelined the very citizens it was meant to serve. "We have been led to believe that progress is inevitable, that our institutions are infallible," he proclaimed. "But what happens when we ignore the cries of the marginalized? When we allow the voices of dissent to be drowned out by the clamor of self-interest? His questions were rhetorical, yet they resonated deeply with those who had long felt betrayed by the establishment. At that moment, the atmosphere transformed into something almost tangible, a mixture of hope, anger, and the raw desire for a better future. The live broadcast captured every nuance of Obama's expression, the furrow of his brow, the intensity in his eyes, and the unwavering conviction in his voice. Across social media, the clip of his speech began to circulate within minutes. Hashtags like #ObamaSpeaks, #WakeUpAmerica, and #ReclaimOurVoice rapidly trended as millions tuned in, sharing and commenting on the historic moment. The demonstration, already vibrant with chants and signs, quickly evolved into a cauldron of passionate debate. On one side, supporters lauded Obama's courage to step back into the fray and challenge the status quo. They saw his words as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in times of deep division, there remained a possibility for unity and reform. "He's still the leader we need," one demonstrator shouted, her voice trembling with emotion. "He speaks for us, for the people." On the other side, critics and skeptics began to voice their disapproval. Some argued that his sudden re-entry into political commentary was a calculated move designed to stir controversy, while others questioned the timing of the speech, suggesting it was meant to distract from ongoing political scandals. News channels, which had been covering the event as a human interest story, now scrambled to provide analysis and context. Editorials in major newspapers debated whether Obama's impassioned protest was an act of genuine concern or a strategic maneuver intended to shift the narrative. As the evening wore on, the demonstration became a microcosm of the nation's polarized political climate. The streets, illuminated by the fading light and the glow of smartphone screens, buzzed with conversations about the future of democracy and the role of leadership in a fractured society. Groups of protesters began organizing spontaneous discussions on nearby sidewalks, impromptu town halls, where ordinary citizens debated everything from healthcare to economic policy. In one corner, a group of college students recorded a roundtable discussion on the implications of Obama's speech, their voices overlapping in a mix of excitement and apprehension. In another, seasoned activists led chants that resonated with decades of struggle, urging the audience to demand accountability and transparency from their elected officials. Meanwhile, back in the control rooms of major news networks, pundits and analysts dissected the event in real time. Some praised Obama for his unfiltered honesty, highlighting his decades-long commitment to civil rights and social justice. Others, however, cautioned that his speech could further polarize an already divided nation. "It's a high-risk move," one political commentator remarked during a live segment. "But perhaps it's exactly what we need to jolt our complacent system out of its slumber." In the days following the demonstration, the incident dominated headlines worldwide. Documentaries and special reports were commissioned to analyze every word of the speech and every reaction it provoked. Social media platforms became virtual town squares, where discussions, memes, and even heated debates took place. The sheer audacity of a former president stepping into the fray of street politics had set off a chain reaction, sparking rallies, inspiring grassroots movements, and forcing political parties to reckon with the growing discontent among the populace. For Barack Obama himself, the aftermath was a mixture of quiet introspection and public scrutiny. In a series of interviews with trusted media outlets, he reflected on the motivations behind his decision to speak out. "I've always believed that leadership is not about standing on a pedestal and delivering polished speeches from behind closed doors," he said solemnly. "It's about connecting with the people, acknowledging our shared struggles, and being unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths." His measured tone and thoughtful analysis only deepened the impact of his words, reinforcing the notion that his protest was not an isolated outburst, but the culmination of years of witnessing systemic failings. In academic circles and policy think tanks, scholars began to examine the incident as a pivotal moment in modern political discourse. Conferences were convened to explore the implications of a public figure of Obama's stature openly challenging the established order. Research papers emerged, positing that such acts of dissent were essential for the evolution of democracy, even if they came at the cost of stirring controversy and inciting division. As weeks turned into months, the raw energy of that autumn day gradually subsided, yet its legacy endured. The streets where the demonstration took place became hallowed ground for those who believed in the power of protest. New civic groups emerged, inspired by the courage of a man who dared to speak when silence was the easier option. And in the digital realm, the archived footage of Obama's surprise speech continued to be shared, analyzed, and revered as a landmark moment, a reminder that change often begins when the status quo is challenged head-on. For many, the memory of that day remains a vivid snapshot of hope and defiance, a moment when an icon of modern history reminded the world that democracy is a living, breathing entity, nourished by the voices of its people. And while debates about the effectiveness and timing of his intervention continue to this day, one thing is indisputable: Barack Obama's unscheduled, electrifying appearance at that street demonstration left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness, redefining what it means to lead in turbulent times. In the end, the incident was more than just a political protest. It was a call to action, a spark that lit a fire under a complacent society, urging each individual to question, to speak out, and to strive for a future where the ideals of justice and equality are not just lofty aspirations, but the very foundation of our daily lives. And as history moves forward, that moment of unscripted truth will continue to resonate, a beacon of courage in a world that desperately needs change.